Before spending time figuring out the best way to do cardio to burn fat, I wanted to first make sure whether or not I actually needed to do any at all. So I asked an expert. Yo Patches, how's it going man? Long time no see. Just a quick one. Would you say that doing cardio is necessary to lose fat?
Necessary?
Yeah, as in do I have to do it?
Is it necessary for me to drink my own urine?
Not really sure where you're going with it. I mean, what's the relevance?
No. But I do it anyway because it's sterile and I like the taste.
It's really not helpful, not what I was asking.
Any other questions?
No, that will be all. Thanks. The truth, of course, is that you can lose fat without ever doing any cardio because fat loss is just a product of burning more calories than you consume. So instead of doing cardio to burn more calories, you could just consume fewer. However, there will likely come a point when eating less and less becomes more uncomfortable than just getting up and doing some cardio. So for most people, it makes sense to attack it from both angles. Eat a bit less and move a bit more. There are, of course, other reasons to do cardio from a physical and psychological health perspective, but I'm talking solely in the context of fat loss for this video. So we should probably incorporate some cardio into our routine if we're trying to lose fat. But what should we do? Well, there are three things to decide. What intensity, which modality, and how much. Intensity. When you get on a cardio machine at the gym, you'll often see a guide that shows a particular heart rate as the fat burn zone. This is based in science, but its practical application isn't particularly useful. Studies have been done looking at various exercise intensities and determining the point at which maximal fat oxidation occurs, or in plain terms, when the body is using the most fat as a fuel source. This increases with exercise intensity to a point before falling off at higher intensities when carbohydrate oxidation becomes the dominant energy source. The zone of maximal fat oxidation is often given as a percentage of the individual's VO2 max, fat max, but can also be expressed as a rough heart rate zone, and this is where the fat burn zone comes from. So, will you burn more fat if you stick within these zones? During the session, probably, but overall, probably not, because even if you were to perform very high intensity exercise and therefore utilize predominantly glucose and glycogen as your energy sources during the session, you would then shift back towards primarily fat oxidation when it comes to fueling all the processes associated with recovering from a bout of high intensity exercise. So in a sense, you're just borrowing from Peter to pay Paul. It's all swings and roundabouts. You know, I'm sure there are other sayings that apply here. Ultimately, your focus should simply be on burning calories to create a negative energy balance, not on the minutiae of optimal fat oxidation levels. But what about retaining muscle? Most people don't just want to lose fat, but they also want to keep what muscle they have. And that's why much of the LISS versus HIIT debate centers around which is best for preserving muscle mass. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole because the whole point of this YouTube video is to save your time rather than waste it. So I'll just make this point. You retain muscle by continuing to resistance train in exactly the same way as if you were trying to build muscle, ensuring adequate protein intake, ensuring you don't undereat by too much. Do those and you won't need to worry about choosing HIIT or LISS from a muscle retention perspective. Instead, you should make that decision based on other factors, namely, what you enjoy most. This should help with adherence, and studies have shown that cardio only helps when you actually do it. How much time you can dedicate to each session. If you've got 7 kids and 3 jobs, then maybe HIIT might be better suited to your schedule. Your ability to recover. If you're already lifting 5 or 6 times a week, or if you're undersleeping or stressed, I would lean more towards the less taxing option of LISS because that'll put less of a strain on you overall and interfere less with your recovery than HIIT would. If you can't or just don't want to decide, just do what most people do and do a bit of both. Then you can auto-regulate sessions, which is the technical term for making it up as you go along. So if one day you're not feeling up to HIIT, you can just do LISS, easy. To summarize, when you're doing cardio in the amounts that we'll specify later, intensity isn't going to be a significant factor in how much fat you lose or muscle you preserve. High intensity exercise will burn more calories per minute, but low intensity will allow you to go for longer. So choose whatever allows you to get the most calories burned within the time you have available and to your fitness level. Modality. Is it better to cycle or run or swim or skip? That's jump rope for American people. I don't know why you gotta be so literal about everything. Now, I did do extensive research for this video and I couldn't find anything other than articles that quote figures for calories burned per hour with very little context and no sources. Luckily, it doesn't really matter what burns most calories because plenty of things burn enough. Running seems to come out on top generally, but it's not like you can't burn enough calories cycling or swimming. Just go faster. That sounds simplistic, but the point I'm getting at is it's your fitness that will be the limiting factor on how many calories you're able to burn, not which exercise modality you choose. So aside from calories burned, do some exercise modalities preserve muscle mass better than others? Maybe in untrained individuals, yeah. In untrained individuals, they'll even build muscle. But for people who are actually resistance training often and only doing cardio to aid fat loss, no. The only other thing you might want to consider is the impact of different activities. If you're particularly concerned about your joints, you might want to swim or cycle instead of running, but realistically, if you're a healthy, injury-free individual doing cardio a couple of times a week, I don't think you need to specifically avoid running on that basis. You know, people run, like, you got to take some risks in life. So again, much like intensity, the type of cardio you do should probably be largely determined by factors other than what might be scientifically most optimal. And I would say the primary factor should be what you enjoy most. Forms of cardio that offer some kind of distraction from the fact that you're doing cardio will allow you to burn more calories. I play 7-a-side football once or twice a week and I guarantee I burn more calories in that hour than I could running on a treadmill because I'm not looking at calories and distance on a screen and being aware of my breath and thinking about how tired I am all the time. I'm just running after a ball. It's like going for a run with stuff on your mind versus going for a run where your life's all great and you've got no inner turmoil to daydream about. Like, distraction is key. Even something as small as listening to music has been described as a dissociative cognitive strategy that enables a shift in attention away from subjective experiences of discomfort or pain. So if you can find something that doesn't feel like cardio, you're probably going to be able to burn more calories doing it, and that's really the main thing. How much? So intensity and modality aren't particularly important, but that isn't because there is absolutely no difference in how they can affect a physique. You often see the classic sprinter physique versus long distance runner physique as an argument for why you should do HIIT over LISS. But tempting as they are for simplifying life, analogies like this are often highly contextual and unfortunately don't hold true for most situations. These two examples exist at the extremes of a spectrum of specificity. The long distance runner might run over 100 miles per week in preparation for a competition, and the sprinter, well, they don't just sprint in training, they actually do weights too. So it's not really something you can look at and say, oh, this is better for your physique than this. They are extremes and they're situations that we really aren't in. And in terms of modality, there is actually research suggesting some types are better for preserving muscle mass than others. So why am I saying that these things don't really matter? Well, they just don't matter when you're doing cardio in the amounts that you should be doing it. If you weren't weight training whatsoever and just planned on doing cardio 5 or 6 times a week, I would say, sure, choose the cardio that builds or just preserves muscle the best. And if you didn't care about preserving muscle and simply wanted to lose weight regardless of where that weight came from, I'd say, sure, choose the cardio that burns the most calories. But most people want an athletic, at least somewhat muscular physique. And if that's the case, resistance training should be your primary focus even when trying to lose fat. That's because of something called the interference effect, which basically says that the more cardio you do, the greater negative impact it will have on muscle strength and gains. This has been shown in multiple studies. So maybe we should just do zero cardio then? Well, that's probably a bit extreme. You see, the interesting thing about this interference effect is that it's body part specific. So cycling, for example, doesn't seem to interfere with upper body strength. That says to me that a large part of this effect is probably down to recovery or lack thereof, and by extension we can probably mitigate this effect by allowing for proper recovery. To summarise, putting all of this together along with a few more studies that we'll link in the video description, we can get to the following recommendations. 1. Spend 75% plus of your training time lifting weights. As an example, that could mean 3 1-hour weight sessions per week and then 2 30-minute cardio sessions. That will naturally put a reasonable cap on the amount of cardio that you can do in a week, which you can then supplement with a very low intensity activity such as walking that would still contribute to your overall calorie expenditure but probably doesn't class as cardio per se. 2. Make up the majority of your calorie deficit by reducing calorie consumption. Supplement that with cardio when calories get low enough that you'd rather do cardio than eat less. 3. Perform your cardio on separate days to your weight training. If you have to do it on the same day, then lift first and separate it by as much time as possible. If you have to do it in the same session, do it only after you've finished your weights. 4. If you weight train often, I'd say 5+ times per week, then a low impact form of low intensity steady state cardio might be the best option for recovery. If recovery isn't an issue, choose HIIT or LISS or mix and match and choose the modality you prefer. Number 5. Do stuff you enjoy. If you can find cardio that doesn't feel like cardio, that is what we commonly term as ideal. Thanks for watching, everybody. Please like my video because I actually had to learn to skip for this, which took me, it was a good, I filmed for a while before I managed to get a sequence of like a few jumps, you know what I mean? So, thanks, bye.
Jordy Lenny is my hero!